Hey guys, so I just finished the webinar with Mark and Jamie from Equitable. They are incredible. Everything you need to know about employee benefits, executive benefits, retirement plans, medical and health insurance and all that stuff, exit planning. They cover the whole gambit. So I've got timestamps below. The first 10 or 15 minutes, I haven't edited anything yet, but about that it felt like is probably kind of intros and a little bit about what they do. The next about 45 minutes is moving through each of those different things. So check out the timestamps. If there's something that grabs you more than anything else, you could jump to it. And then the very end, we have some Q&A, took some questions from people on the webinar. And a whole bunch of stuff. We ran a little bit long just because there was so much content, but I think you guys are going to absolutely love it. And their contact information is below. If you need to get in touch with them, I can tell you I've worked personally with Jamie and known Mark to some capacity for the last decade now. They have helped me so immensely with almost everything that we talk about. We set up health insurance through them. We set up retirement plans through them. We set up key person insurance and buy-sell agreements and all these kind of exit planning things that really helped us. We put together some executive comp structure that was very tax beneficial. And so all of these things I think that you guys will find great value in. I can't thank them enough for being here, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Give me your feedback. If there's another webinar that you'd like to see, another expert you'd like me to get in here, let me know who that would be, and I'll try and reach out and find them from my network. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this very, very special webinar. I have with me two extremely smart and talented people, Mark Rooney, Jamie Smith. I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Jamie, especially, although I know that Jamie and Mark work very closely together. But I've had the opportunity to work with Jamie for several years now, almost a decade, helping me to do a lot of the stuff that they're going to be sharing today, the executive planning, the key person planning. I eventually exited my business. They helped me with the exit planning from both sides, really, both for me and my brother when I ended up exiting that business. And so a lot of the retirement planning stuff. So everything that we're covering today, I have firsthand knowledge of. They've done an incredible job guiding me and helping me to get things to where I really feel just safe and secure with my business. And they're going to get through kind of some of that today and share as much as they can. I think how this is going to go is I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who's going to do some bios and intros. They can probably they've got more letters and degrees and all those things than I can possibly know or remember. So they'll share some of that stuff with you guys. And then they'll open it up. They've got a little track that they can do to walk you guys through some of these major kind of principles. Then we'll open it up for Q&A. So anybody has questions, just go ahead and type them in the chat. I'll go ahead and moderate those. When we get to the end, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So I don't want to take any more time. Jamie, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Hey, Corey, thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to speak today. We really appreciate it. Like you said, I'm Jamie Smith. Yes, that is a random wildlife photo in the background there. Hopefully it detracts from my lack of hair, maybe. So, but seriously, thanks for having us on. We're excited to talk to everyone today about executive benefits and the business strategies group and all the great stuff we do. I thought what we do is start with just quick bio background, like you mentioned. I'm going to share the screen, just a quick slide with me. You got my screen?
We're in.
Okay, well, there you go. I can wear a suit and tie, just like Mark, so there's proof of it. But a couple quick bullets on my background. I've been with this same company. I always say I'm a recovering attorney. I'm an attorney, been so for 20 years now, but it's a recovery process. I got into financial services back in 2003. Worked my way up in the management track. I ran our San Diego office for our company for a little over a decade. I was the regional president at one point where I covered 17 states in the Western United States for our company. And you see some of the other stuff on there, but really this bullet here, this fourth bullet, I got to co-found and I'm a managing partner with the Business Strategies Group. And that's been just an incredible transition for me. When Mark approached me, it's an idea he's been thinking about for many, many years. And we put this thing together. And it's really neat and unique in the marketplace. So I would like to turn it over to Mark Rooney, and you'll see on this next slide, he's got a little bit more on the bio than I do. It's stacked, you can barely read it. But the truth is, Mark is all around great guy. He's got a background in economics from the London School of Business and on and on. Mark, why don't I throw it your way to go through whatever you'd like to cover on this one.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jamie. And yeah, I am the guy in the suit. They accuse me of never taking it off, even when I go to sleep, which might mean that they claim I'm an old guy and I sleep at work. But you can see, you can read there that I've been engaged in the industry for a long time. actually for 48 years. And in that 48 years, I've played a lot of different roles within the company and within the industry. One of the things that may come up today is the lobbying that we're involved in. And a lot of times when people hear lobbying, they think you're spending money or giving secret checks out to people. 99% of lobbying is doing exactly what we're going to do on this show today, which is helping our legislators understand how things work and why they work that way. Now, every legislator, when they first come in, they're new. They came from a medical background, a business owner background, a legal background, something. But now they're expected by their constituency to know everything about everything. And so they have to rely on people that might be good resources to them. From our selfish interest, we want them to understand things. Now, I don't have to do the same thing over and over again with Kevin McCarthy. Once he's learned our message, he's learned our message. But every year they have new aides in there. So a lot of the things that you're going to hear today are going to be things that get related to the highest people in the legislature in this country. And it's important. So, and it's right now, it's particularly important because, as you know, every day on the news, you're hearing that a lot of things are in play. A lot of things could change. And we may touch on some of that maybe in the Q&A. Go ahead, Jamie. I guess what we want to do is first a little background on our engagement with the closely held business marketplace. You know, the reason that we really focused on this, and when Jamie said in recent times, you know, I've been engaged with it in one way or another since 1976. I was in the Bay Area, and when Silicon Valley was just getting its name, we were doing a lot of work with the businesses that were then very closely held. Today are not closely held. They've grown substantially. And that's where all of this really began, in trying to deal with what we phrase at the top of that, the coordinated and comprehensive services for businesses. Well, what's that all about? 98% of the businesses in the United States, and you know, I'll start with saying 87% of all statistics are made up, and I just made that up. But I think a lot of these statistics are pretty viable. And 98% of the businesses in the US are considered small business. Now, the definition by the government standard of small business is under 100 employees. So they focus not on sales volume or whatever, but under 100 employees. Now, 100 employee business, as you know, is not a small business, but that's the definition. The other 2% are the giant corporations, the IBMs and the Apples and the Amazons. 47% of the employees in the country are employed by small businesses. The other 53% are part of that greater whole. But most importantly, right now, in sort of a changing economy, 87% of the new job formation is coming out of small businesses, not out of big businesses. Other than for seasonal hiring, you'll continually see a dropping down in the number of employees in the bigger companies. And you're seeing that recreated by the hiring that gets replaced by the initiative of small business owners or closely held business owners. Now, why is that important to us? Well, I'm part of a big company. We're a division of Equitable, a massive financial services firm. But and in our company, we have HR departments, legal departments, benefit departments, all with full-time, high-paid experts inside there. What is their job? Figure out the best things that exist in the marketplace for us, for the executives of the company, for the employees of the company. But in a closely held business, who has those departments? You know, you literally have to rely on your own decision-making, usually in a pretty fast fashion, almost always without complete information. And where would the expertise come from? Where would the ability to shop the market, the time to shop the market come from? So unfortunately, people end up dealing with disparate providers. They'll call a Blue Cross and get some kind of healthcare program put together. They'll use their payroll service to give them a cookie cutter retirement program. their insurance agent will talk to them about some kind of strategy for funding their buy-sell agreements. But there's no coordination in any of this thing. Well, if you look at the chart up there, we highlight we'll call them the squares. I don't think they're exactly square, but the 4 squares. And that's the work that we do with business owners. And then you've got the circles that we don't do directly, but we will refer that out. If somebody doesn't have an accounting relationship or a lending relationship at this point that they're comfortable with, we interact with that all the time, and we can refer them to the proper people. So fundamentally, what we're trying to do is say we're an organized shop with the expertise and the time and the connections and the contracts to be able to identify the needs of that business owner, get out and shop the marketplace to find what the best arrangements are, and perhaps more importantly, educate you about what your options are, all the different approaches you could take to things, because you'll hear me repeat that many times during the course of our discussion, that almost everything becomes a design issue. What do you want to accomplish? And then what can be done within the confines of the market and the regulators and the legislation to be able to get to the end game, get to the outcome that you want to get to. So let me start. And Jamie, anything more that you'd want to insert before I kind of run through the substance of those squares?
No, I think you're on a roll. One thing I just want to check real quick, the Zoom menu, is that on just my screen, or is that coming through to you guys?
I don't see any menu.
All right.
I just see the strategies group.
You're all good, Jim.
Perfect. Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, and I'm impressed with whatever's behind your head. Mine has no image, right? This is just me sitting in the office. Jamie successfully sits in other places. I sit in the office. Okay, you start with employee benefits. And in the employee benefit, this is usually the first thing that a business looks at when they're trying to put some kind of package together for themselves and their employees. Important to a business owner because you need to worry about your own benefits. But if you just buy them yourself, they're really not deductible other than as an expense up against AGI and your total incomes. But the minute that you get it as a company benefit, even if it's just 3 or 4 people in the company, now it becomes a deductible expense for the business. The biggest expense, the biggest line item expense usually is the healthcare. Now, healthcare, as you may know, is mandated in the state of California. I don't know how many people are from other states, but most places healthcare is mandated. Now, it doesn't say the employer has to do it, but people have to have healthcare. And that's why the Obama Care was created, that you can go into the public sites and get it. Now we know, and the government will fund it for a lot of people if they can't afford to get it, but it's expected that people have it. Now, the vast majority of people will get it through their employer. The employer can arrange for sort of the discounted buying capability. They can deduct it as an expense, and then you can set it up as contributory, meaning the employees can share in the cost. The employees could literally pay the whole cost. And you could simply be coordinating the program so they could get something better at a group volume, but that they pay for entirely. So there's huge flexibility in the design of how you want to fund that and set that up for yourself and your employees. And it really depends on what stage you are in the business. You know, what can you afford to do?
Mark,
I can tell you for
Mark, I'll jump in here and just for the audience, kind of let you guys know what we had decided was when we set this up was that we were going to contribute the first $350 towards health insurance for each one of our employees. And if they wanted to bring in additional family members, or they had they wanted to pick a plan that exceeded that $350 as a monthly premium, they certainly had the option to do so. But if they chose a plan for them and whatever dependents they had, that was under $350 where we're paying the entire thing. So you can certainly get really creative with this. And you guys had helped us really construct that right plan, that it was comfortable for us to be paying a good chunk towards everybody. And that did end up covering most people. But we had a couple employees, being a small business that had 7 or 8 employees. Some had families that they wanted to get on that health insurance plan as well. And so we contributed the first $350 and they contributed the rest. So just some ideas there.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. And that is it. The point, that's the design idea. Figure out what's comfortable within the budget of the company, what you want to do, how competitive you want to appear versus other people that might be trying to hire the same people. And as you know, it's a lot of people take employee benefits for granted. They really don't understand the expense of business owners going through. We try to help the people understand that. Now, I mentioned the group health, but then you look on there and it says dental, vision, life, disability. Those are all pretty important benefits too. But the reality is they're very inexpensive. We usually kind of attach them almost like riders into the group health plan. And the reality is you could just get those individually as voluntary benefits and then do the same thing Corey was talking about with the overall benefit plan, that you could say, hey, we're making dental available to you. We're making vision available to you if you want to purchase. Now, it's not totally that simple because, there's going to be, the companies are going to have participation requirements and, minimum number of enrollees and that type of thing. But that's all sort of the design work of saying, how do I start cobbling together a benefit program? And as I get more successful and more capable of paying for more of it for the employees, I can do so. I can tell you though, even the biggest companies, in our company, they have sort of an incentivized program, but it starts at the company picks up half the cost, we pick up half the cost, and then you have incentives to get the company picking up more of the cost, which you could certainly do in a performance-based kind of environment for your employees as well. Now, underneath that, it says financial wellness and coordinating your personal plans with the company benefits. I can tell you that most employees, even most executives, they don't really understand fully how to maximize the use of the benefits that the company is paying for, which can become very frustrating if you're paying for those benefits. And sometimes they're not very well appreciated. Well, what we do is we meet with each way, it might not be Jamie and me individually, but within the firm, we meet with each one of the employees that's enrolling in benefit programs. And we have a program that we call Asset Map, but it's kind of a planning program. And what we talk to the people about is, one, how to maximize the utilization of their benefits that they have. This isn't saying add additional expense to the employer. It's saying they're paying for this stuff. Utilize it to the max that you can, because it's the insurance companies that are going to be paying for it. So maximize the use of it, use it wisely. But then also, let's look at what you're doing individually with your investments, your insurances, because invariably there are redundancies. People are paying multiple fees for the same kind of accounts individually. Business owners could be running programs through the company and getting deductions on them or paying lower taxes on them rather than doing it individually. So that process of wellness and coordinating what you're doing individually with what you can do through your company is an important process. And it's very individualized. I mean, it's literally sitting down with each employee. If it's the owners or executives in the company, it may commonly be Jamie and I sitting down with them. But
yeah, Mark, let me jump in here really quickly because this one's a little bit unique for me in the fact that I am the owner. So I remember sitting down with you guys and going through a lot of this and implemented a whole bunch of different strategies. At the employee level, what specifically are kind of the options or the plans that you guys are putting in place? You had mentioned, obviously, that there's some tax advantages that I know the business can take place of, and some retirement plans and things like that we were able to get in place. I know we'll cover that later. But when you talk about financial wellness at the employee level, what specifically are some of the actions that they may take once you sit down with them to create that?
Well, I'll give you one example, because again, it's so individualistic on what people are doing. At the lower level, they might not be doing too much as people's income go up. They're doing a lot of things. But I can tell you that a lot of people have investment, I'll call them investment accounts, but advisory accounts or brokerage accounts would be technical terms in with us. And they're buying things inside those investment or brokerage accounts. They're buying funds, they're buying stocks, they're buying whatever they're buying as their investments. Then they've got a retirement program inside their company. And they think that they're properly diversified. They think that they're paying the appropriate fees and all that. Well, you find out that, hey, they have Fidelity investments inside their brokerage account. They have Fidelity investments in an old IRA. They have Fidelity investments inside their company retirement program. Well, now what's happening? Not only are you not as diversified as you thought, you got a lot of redundancies, but there's price breaks that you can get in all of those Fidelity programs. And they're not hitting the price breaks in any one of those because they got it spread all around. By a little reconfiguration, they could now be getting those price breaks, creating the proper diversity, and getting the money in the right sort of tax bucket that they want to. Now, we're not going to know that until we sit down and visit with somebody and say, what are you doing individually? And what could you be doing through your company?
Great. So this is
That would be an example.
it's a micro level of financial planning with each individual employee to some extent. Is that correct?
That'd be a fair way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just make the point too that about, I don't know, 10 years ago for sure, even further back, 15 years ago, this concept of wellness hit all the HR departments around the country. And at the time, it really was about your physical well-being, right? And we remember, companies saying, look, if you're not physically healthy, or if you're not physically well, you're missing days of work, you're not as effective while you're at work. And so that was the big push. And that was wellness when we first got introduced to that concept. And then people started realizing, hey, what's the second biggest concern, maybe the first biggest, even before health, and it's your financial well-being. And that's why you see the term financial wellness. It's very intentional. It's not just some random term being thrown about. It's that if your employees and your partners and the co-owners have a legitimate plan for where they're headed, how they're going to retire, how they get out, and they see the value that's being added. So many of these plans that we put into place in the old days, employees they just weren't aware of them. The company's doing great things for their employees and the employees don't even know it. And so you want to get your bang for your buck in terms of marketing to get the best talent. And so financial wellness, I mean, it's all over all the financial commercials you see out there now. It's all about financial wellness because happy employees are more productive, and being happy has a lot to do with financial security.
Yeah, and to put, as you say, the finer point on it, the biggest of big companies, they have this kind of thing for their executives that they'll have. The executives can partake in individual financial planning exercises and spend time with advisors, and the company's picking up the cost. Well, by doing this asset map process that we use, quite literally, you can offer the same kind of benefit to people. There's no cost to it. And you can offer the same kind of benefit to people that the biggest of companies do. And in everything that we look at least in the next couple, it is a changing marketplace. I mean, people are saying, beyond my simple compensation package, what else do I get if I work with you? Now, I know I can go down into flex times and working from home and all of that, but somehow, some way, everybody's got to deal with their benefit programs. Everybody's got to deal with their personal finances. And the more support you can give them, as a company, and promote it, because usually companies don't really promote very well what they can do for their employees. This is a big advantage to people. Moving down to box 2, knowing that we got a finite amount of time here today. Moving down, I'm going to go to the bottom right, or at least that's the way it is on my screen. And that's the company retirement programs. Now, almost everybody in today's world thinks of the company retirement program as a 401k. So that's sort of a language that everybody knows. But when you look at the wording on that box with pensions, defined benefits, defined contributions, profit sharing, simplified employee pensions, et cetera, there's a lot of variations on a theme. The one thing that will be constant, the nickname that we give any of these plans, it's not a nickname really, it's structured in the IRS code, is qualified plans. And it means to get the tax benefit that's in there, you need to meet the qualifications, the rules that the government has. As you can imagine, the government believes, that it's for the societal good that people put money away for their retirement, because Social Security is only going to provide them so much, if anything. I mean, there's a lot of people at a certain age that just believe it won't really exist, or it'll exist de minimisly by the time I would be receiving any of it. But however you calculate that in, then on top of that, what are you putting ahead of yourself for your retirement? Because if you don't do something, you're going to be in a boatload of trouble at retirement. And I'm sure you're reading all the time that it is considered that a lot of America is in a boatload of trouble. So you're seeing the legislators all the time trying to work on this issue and say, we've got to figure out how to be able to enable more, to get people putting more money away for their future. The biggest way they can do it is utilize the tax code, make things tax attractive, and try to do investing inside the attractive tax wrappers. So if you meet the rules, they call it qualified. Now, the tax advantage you get is the money that goes in there is pre-tax. So if I earned $10,000 and I was going to throw it inside a retirement plan that was qualified, then I pay no tax on the $10,000. I just throw it inside there. So all the money gets in there. If I were just doing the investing outside, I'd pay, whatever your tax bracket is, 25% on the $10,000. I'd have $7,500 left to invest. Well, you can see the enormous tax leverage you get by being able to utilize the qualified plan. And then on top of that, while it grows, it's not taxed. Okay, now, there's a theory about taxation that it's illegal to avoid taxation in America, but managing when, where, and how you pay those taxes is smart. Okay, and that's part of what qualified plans are all about. You're avoiding the tax on the front side, you're avoiding all the tax while it grows, which means the compounding inside there is going to be tremendous over a period of time. And then the time that you'll pay the piper, that you'll pay the tax, is when you withdraw it, when you start taking it as income in retirement. Now, again, there's rules. You can't leave it in there forever because it's supposed to be a retirement plan. So they have required minimum distributions at a certain age. Right now it's 72. You're not supposed to touch the money before 59 and a half, saying, this isn't to save up for a boat or a house. This is to put money away for retirement. Those are all part of the rules about making the money qualified and being able to hold the tax advantage. Once it's in a qualified plan, there's a lot of rules about discrimination, participation, and basically it says what you're going to do for one person, you're going to do for everybody. Now, that's a little overstated because there is design discrimination you can do within limits to try to get a little more money into the hands of higher paid people while still taking care of lower paid people. But for everybody, up to whatever the limits are, and they put caps on this, they put limitations on how much money can get inside of it, because it is a huge tax break. But for anybody, it's a really good opportunity because the tax advantage is enormous. Okay, the big thing is designing the plan so that it meets what you want to try to accomplish in your company. If you're really trying to take care of everybody equally, there's one design. If you're saying, hey, I really want to heavy load the executives and, kind of do what I can for the employees, a different design. Corey, I'm sorry, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, just going back to kind of what you guys helped us get set up. So we had set up a 401k that we did a 100% match for the first 3%. And then we did a 50% match for the next 4%, meaning that an employee who was contributing 7% of their paycheck towards their 401k would get 5% of that matched on top. So they were tax-free, taking 7% of their paycheck and getting 12% of their paycheck tax-free put into a retirement account. And I can tell you that We worked in a very millennial workforce, and there wasn't a lot of our team who was thinking about doing much in terms of savings or retirement. And when you came in and helped us get this set up, it was something that certainly helped our entire millennial workforce to think differently about savings and getting ahead and not just kind of living paycheck to paycheck. Although I don't know that this gets people out of living paycheck to paycheck, but it does start to give them a different outlook on kind of what a paycheck means and what it can mean for either today or for the future. And so I think that was really important. And then, moving into my own solo practice, once I exited the business and moved into my own thing, you guys got me set up with really even far more advantageous tax planning in terms of retirement and things that we're able to do with the Roth Solo 401k and things like that, where there's large contributions going in, and many of those tax-free, although some of them paying taxes now to get the tax-free growth and throughout the life of it. So you guys on this, there's so many creative things that can be done. That you guys just really helped. And like I said, the thing that I think was the most powerful was not just how you helped set this up, but how it literally changed the outlook of what my workforce was thinking about their paycheck and how they treated money after this, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. And a point you made there, as soon as people are making enough money that they start thinking about investing, and investing kind of becomes something interesting or cool for them to do. If they can learn about the tax advantages and realize, well, I can invest inside a qualified plan the same way I'd be investing outside, but look what happens when I take the tax advantage. Look how much more money I have when I start utilizing the tax code to my advantage, rather than just paying the tax on any gains that I would get. Now, of course, you got to deal within the confines. You got to deal within, liquidity issues. But the minute people can understand that, hey, that qualified plan is really just a wrapper to do investing, and anything I want to put away for the long term, it's going to make a huge amount of difference in the money I have at the end of the game.
Real quick, Mark, I'd like to point out, Corey, the biggest mistake that we see with closely held businesses when they get into that box and start doing those company retirement plans is they will often, just for ease of use, bolt on a 401k plan from their payroll provider, right? And the payroll providers don't have particular expertise in that. They offer it as yet another hook into the client in order to keep their payroll services going. We'll often run into those plans and they're not optimized. Now is not the forum to get into some of the horror stories we've had to unwind, but they'll let them go over, if they're poorly run, they'll let them go over the contributions. So you have an IRS issue at the end of the year where you literally have to back out contributions because they went beyond the limits. And so when we look at payroll provided plans, it doesn't mean they're inherently bad. It's just a one-off from their business model. And we often come in and say, hey guys, we could design this a lot better for what you're trying to accomplish. We have a whole team that just focuses on company retirement plans. That's all they do. They don't do the group, health benefits or employee benefits or any of the other stuff on here. All they do are retirement plans and the means testing and everything that Mark was talking about. So just for the viewers, one of the most common mistakes that we see is, oh yeah, my payroll, said, hey, you want it? We're running a special this month on if you do a 401k plan with us, we'll give you a $50 gift card or something. Not the way to go about installing a company retirement plan.
And to be clear, and you guys can get into this a little bit more than me. When we set this up, it was so long ago, but I don't remember there being any fees that we paid additionally, in the same way that we could either snap it on with our payroll or we could reach out to you and get this set up. The amount that it means to me, the employer, is the exact same, but the benefit that it has towards the plan and the employees is going to be significantly different. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'd be right. But, to phrase what Jamie was saying a little different, most people do the payroll plans because it's convenient, it's simple. And there's no question, that's true. I mean, the administration of a qualified plan there's work to it, it's a pain. And if your payroll provider can do it, great. That does make life easier. But we can hook up with the payroll provider. So we integrate with the payroll services all the time. to administer the plan. So that goes back to what you were saying. There's really no difference. There's no difference in the fees or something going on. And if a company wants to work through their payroll provider, that's great. We can do that with almost all payroll providers. But the kind of the cookie cutter plan, as Jamie was saying, they get, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, they get a 4, because they got to kind of do it the standard way. They can't design it with the payroll provider, but they could get a 9 or a 10 with us and then just let the payroll provider do the administration inside the plan.
Understood.
So, and then, sometimes people just hate their payroll provider too. So we work with a lot of those, and we can just recommend another payroll provider that might be seamlessly useful to them. We're not in the payroll business, but we certainly work with enough of them that we can refer people. Moving to the next box, which I'm going to go up now to the executive compensations. Let me give the easiest. This is another one where there's a lot of variations on a theme. Okay. Now we called that box below it the qualified plans. With this, it's non-qualified. Okay, that's our generic name. All of these things are non-qualified, which basically means you're not taking the tax break up front. Okay, so you're not taking some government deduction up front on this. But the big issue with the non-qualified is now you take the tax benefit coming out the backside. So you get all the accumulation period deferred. You don't pay any tax while you're building it up. And then when you take it out, it's non-taxed. Now that's a big and growing issue because, as you can imagine, as tax bracket, I mean, I don't know anybody we've spoken with that believes tax brackets are going to go down. And, we can't go into all our charting on this today. But if you look at the history of taxation in the United States, you always hate it no matter what it is that you're paying. But you go back to the immediate post-World War II, we were paying 94% top end bracket in the United States, 94. Today the top end is 37 and, they talk about 39, but that doesn't sound super material next to 94. I remember I'm old enough that I, grew up knowing Beatles songs. And there was one of the songs, it was The Tax Man, there was a Beatles song. And in the song, they say 19 for you and 1 for me. Well, that was 95% tax bracket. 19 nickels go to the government and 1 nickel stays with you. And that was legit. I mean, tax brackets were that high at one point in time. Today, they're at as bad as they feel, they're at a historic, relatively low point. So most anybody, particularly looking at the national debt, particularly looking at entitlement programs, particularly looking at aging populations, anything that you would lay out there that's demographic in nature. And the minute it becomes demographic, it's going to happen. It isn't like an opinion or a prediction or something. It's going to happen. More and more people are going to be old. More and more entitlement money is going to have to get paid out. More and more people are going to need retirement securities. It's very predictable. So when you look at a predictable environment like that, you start saying the money's going to have to come from somewhere. Okay, so I don't think that we've spoken to anybody that has ever said, I think taxes are going to go down. It's relatively accepted they're going to go up. Question is just how far. That creates the real importance of looking out in the future. Do I have a bucket of tax-free income? Getting the tax advantage currently at a current tax bracket, well, that's important. But what happens? Jamie used to, what was it, the seed and the harvest kind of thing? Mm-hmm. I mean, do I want to pay tax on the seed or do I want to pay tax on the harvest? And, the way qualified plans are set up, or individual investments, whether it's real estate or securities ownership or whatever you might buy individually, that's really any tax advantage you would get is now. But at the end of the day, you're going to be paying the taxes out there at the highest end. Getting this tax-free bucket of money kind of built up becomes, when it's harvest season, I'm not going to, where the bucket is big, not little like it was at the beginning, now I'm not going to pay tax on the bucket and or the bushel or whatever what analogy you would use. And that's becoming more and more important. Well, in a sense, that's what this executive benefits is all about. As I mentioned before, qualified planning, kind of caps out. There's only so much money you can get into a qualified plan. And as you make more money, you can't use the qualified plans. You've maxed out.
And
well, how do I try to create some equality, some comparative equal in that? And that's what non-qualified planning is all about. Because when you take the tax break on the backside, it's going to give you every bit of the tax efficiency as taking it on the front side. But now you can do it entirely selectively. So while you had to worry about participation and discrimination and all that when you were dealing with the qualified rules, you don't have to worry about any of that with non-qualified planning. If I've got 4 people inside a 30-person company that I want to do something differential for, I can do it for all 4. And I can do something different for each one of the 4, depending on what their needs are. That's non-qualified planning. The example that I've tended to use is me and my assistant. Now, Tess, who's my assistant, she's pretty well paid. She makes about $80,000 a year, or did. She just recently retired. But between her Social Security, which, as you know, is graded up, but it's not that big a difference between someone who made a ton of dough and someone who didn't. Between her Social Security and her putting as much as she could in her retirement plan, she's going to retire on about 110%, or she did retire on about 110% of her income. So, she had a lifestyle supported by that $80,000. Now she's going to go through retirement with more than that. That's a nice position to be in. Now, me, between my Social Security and me funding, now I put more money in than she could have, but I'm capped out. It's a percentage game with the government. I have 29% of my income coming to me. And some people would say, well, you ran the business. I mean, aren't you every bit as important as your assistant was? So yeah, but in the world of qualified planning, she's 110% important, I'm 29% important. How do you make that difference up? And the way you make that difference up is through the executive benefits.
And Mark, if I'm hearing this correct, you're essentially saying the way that I view this is kind of like a Roth IRA, but you're saying where a Roth IRA might have limits of $6,000 per year, this kind of gives, as an executive, gives the ability to kind of build a program that's similar to the Roth IRA, and that you're paying tax on the way in, you're shoving it away until retirement, but the limits continue to get higher and higher. Although there is a cap, but it's not, it's significantly higher than what the Roth would be.
You're 100%. As a matter of fact, you'll hear these things marketed as executive Roths.
Cool.
Just because you're exactly right. There's no top end to this. There's no cap to this. There's some, but it's pretty darn high. Pretty darn high. So most all executive compensation or executive benefits, it's built around that theme. And then how do you get there? It depends if you're just doing it for one person. Are you doing it for a number of people? Are you going to have it entirely funded by the company? Are you going to have individual contributions into it? Another buzzword you hear around these are 401k mirror plans. So you could have everything inside of there looking like it was a 401k, but you got no limits. And you can do it on whoever you want to do it for.
And the tax advantage is flipped.
It's all what you say. It's got the tax status of a Roth, but none of the limitations or rules.
And Corey, the typical design we do, a lot of people are binary in their approach to this. They say, well, should I do this or should I do that? And what we see, the typical design, you'll have a business owner that says, hey, for me and these 3 other co-owners or executives or key people, we'd like to pump away $100,000 a year. And we'll come in with a hybrid and say, okay, well, let's max out their $19,500 down in their pre-tax qualified plan, or they can do the Roth 401k, whatever down there. But now they hit that cap. Let's take the remaining 80,000 and change and do a non-qualified plan. Because Mark alluded to this earlier, but you really have these buckets in retirement. And you want to fill them both up. It's not one or the other. One's better, one's worse. They're all just tools for planning. And I use the analogy all the time. People get hung up on the tools. It's kind of like an actual toolbox. If you need to unscrew a screw, you theoretically could do it with a hammer if you hit it hard enough, but why not use a screwdriver? And so people get hung up, well, what's better? What's better? They're all just inanimate objects. They're all just vehicles by which to invest. And so we'll blend the plans. And then at the end of the day, let's just keep perfect parity and say you wanted 100 grand a year in retirement. Well, if you have two separate buckets, one's taxable and one's not taxable, and they both have $1 million in it because you built up those buckets, you might take 60 grand out of the taxable bucket, which takes you up to the next tax bracket, and then the remaining 40,000 out of the non-taxable bucket, so that you're not pushed into that higher tax rate.
Sure, that's a really next level thought, that thinking about not just how it's going in, but how you can actually manipulate this on the way out to be tax advantaged too.
And it blows people's mind, because most people don't think about this because they're running their business, right? They went into business to do what they do for business, not to make these decisions on the finances of the business. And that's really our value proposition in the marketplace. And there's not a whole lot of competition in that space that sees it the same way. So call it next level. It's relatively simple once it's shown, and we have charts and graphs, and we go through that whole process with everyone, but everyone has the aha moment. Like, yeah, how come no one taught me this in high school? Right?
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and one of the big things is when you plan it. I mean, anybody who's doing reasonably well, they're without getting deep into retirement planning, you're not going to be able to live your lifestyle on remarkably less money once you retire. I mean, you're pretty much going to need the same amount of money, maybe more, with the unknowns of healthcare and all that. So everybody presumes that, well, I'm going to be paying the same taxes then that I did if I'm making the same income that I did. Well, it doesn't have to be like that at all. This tax management that we talk about, you could really remarkably reduce your taxation on the same amount of income flow in retirement. But it's planning, as Jamie said, it's planning and looking at before the day it happens. Moving to the fourth box, we call it BEST planning, but it's business, exit, succession, and transfer. All of this relates to sort of your timing in the business. You're usually not thinking about this coming out of the gate in a new business. But, Jamie, as you saw in the lead in, is the lawyer, and not that he's practicing law today, but one of the things we always nickname in anybody's articles of incorporation or their partnership agreements, or however they put their business agreements together, is that you have to think about the divorce issues. We nickname it the divorce issues. But what's going to happen when you're going to decide to get out of this business? Whether you're going to decide to get out of it voluntarily, whether you want to give it to your kids that are in the business, whether you want to sell it out to a competitor, or more scarily, in a sense, because that you can kind of plan out a little bit in advance and you got some control on it. But what happens if you're the owner and you die? What happens then, whether it's a sole proprietorship or more, if there's a partnership or multiple partners, what happens? You become disabled, and not for, a couple of months, but long-term disabled, car crash, heart, any kind of medical malady, where you were a contributor to the business, but you're now not going to contribute. Well, if you're a partner in the business or an owner in the business and you can't contribute to it anymore, how long can you continue to take money out of that until it either falls apart or a partner says, hey, we can't continue, I'm doing all the work and you're getting half the money. Now, hard to get very specific on something like this, but when you look at any of those phrases in there, that's what we tend to be going into. The simplest one, you take a partnership and you say there's two people. And now let's say it's Jamie and me. And we've got this partnership and we determine that it's worth $1 million. So it means $500,000's mine, $500,000's his. we're happy as we can be. We're doing all these kind of infomercials for people. And then, Jamie, I'll kill myself off. So I die. Who knows why? You know, I'll do me because I'm the older guy, but it could easily be a car accident. It could be anything. I die. Well, what's happening right now? All of a sudden, Diane, my wife, owns half of the business. She knows nothing about this business. And Jamie's the other half owner. What's going to happen? Is Jamie going to stay in partnership with Diane? Is Diane going to sell my half of the business to some competitor? Is Diane going to come back and say, hey, Jamie, cash me out. I want this much money. We got an agreement that says, here's what it's worth. How's this thing going to go down? Well, that should all be written into the agreements. Now, again, we're not practicing law. Your lawyers can do this for you. If you don't have a business lawyer, we can recommend them. But you got to put agreements together. That's the divorce things that should exist. Now, if you're incorporated and you had an articles of incorporation, it will be in there. You know, no lawyer is going to draft one of those without putting the stuff in there. If you had a lawyer draft articles of partnership, it will be in there. Okay. Then the trick is you've got to execute against it. You know, what happens if something happened? What happens if there was a long-term disability? What happens if there was a death? Now, let's say in the Jamie and my situation, I'm passed away. What should our agreement say? Our agreement should say, hey, Jamie, you've got right of first refusal to buy out my half from the estate. Diane has obligation to sell it to you. She can't go sell it to somebody else or stay in business with you. So now $500,000, you own the full business, right? And you don't have to worry about artificial partners or sending Diane half of the profits when she does none of the work, or her selling to another competitor, or any of the things that could be really destructive and bring the business down.
Again, just taking it back to like how you guys were able to help and guide us here. We did not have a buy-sell agreement. We never had an attorney draft like our actual corporation, because we just got started when we were in our early 20s and just kind of went. And then eventually when we hooked up with you guys had referred us to Nikki Delara, who's an incredible attorney. She helped us draft up all the buy-sell agreements. And there were things that we had to consider that you haven't even mentioned. My brother was married. What happens if he gets divorced and now all of a sudden his part of the business gets split up between him and her, but I'm still a partner because of the divorce? And so there were other things that had to kind of be considered in there. You got to set up with key person insurance, so that, or key man insurance, whatever you want to call it, so that if there was a death, that it would make it really easy for my wife to either, or pardon me to buy out his wife, or him to buy out my wife if something had happened. You got us thinking about disability insurance as well. We got set up with disability insurance, not only for us, but for a couple of the key players on our team, on the executive team as well. We didn't do the key person insurance for them, but we did do disability insurance. And so those were some of the moves that we made based on kind of working with you guys. And I can tell you that all of this happened relatively seamlessly and quickly. I look back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe we did all that, because it seems so simple. But when we look at this, we got health insurance set up for our team and started getting them financially and fiscally responsible and thinking in that direction. It also gave us vehicles to contribute more towards our retirement. We moved over to the 401k, where we were able to set up the 401k plans for us. Pardon me. That's where we got everybody. We had the medical insurance where we were able to contribute, and it became a really a good recruiting factor to be in a company that had 8 or 10 people and was providing such good health insurance. We had the key person insurance, which provided a lot of kind of safety nets for if anything were to happen to my brother or I. And I look at all this stuff, and it was just it seems so seamless, but at the end of it, there were things that we didn't know. It's kind of like you don't know what you don't know, that unknown Johari's window. And those were kind of the things that that we were faced with. And once they became known to us, we were able to take the right actions. And I can tell you that we just felt we felt like a real business because of all the things that we were able to do. Instead of just kind of two guys who were running a business with some employees and stuff, we felt like we had made the right, smart, responsible decisions. And it allowed us the confidence to really grow, and it allowed us to build a really cool team. And so I want to thank you guys. I don't know if you're done. I want to allow you to keep going. I didn't mean to, but this isn't my closing. I just wanted to kind of chime in and say, as I see all this come together, I don't remember, it was 8-10 years ago when we did all this stuff for the first time. And so I don't remember it ever being presented like this, but it's cool to kind of see all of this play out in your presentation to how it actually affected us in real life.
Yeah, well, thank you, Corey, for that. Yeah, and usually nobody's going to do it all at once. I mean, these are all steps, these are all progressions as you move through things. Couple of really quick things. You talked about the insurances in there with the buy sell. Remember, all of these different things, they're really just agreements to make sure that the business is set up properly, both as it's growing and at dissolution time, however that's going to happen, whether it's organized through a transfer, giveaway to a kid or whatever. But then the funding comes in and you say, okay, like in the example of Jamie and me dying, well, I guess Jamie's could pay Diane, my wife, out of operating capital. Horrible for him and big risk for her on the continued success of the business. Could go to the bank if they were a bankable interest. Now, with me out of the picture, they might say, hey, Jamie, we're not lending you the money. But regardless, then you're paying 100% plus interest. Could say, hey, I'm going to set aside a sinking fund in case something happens. Well, how much money do you have there and what business is going to put their money aside for that and not reinvest back in the business? So all of those become kind of ridiculous. And then you realize, hey, for a small premium, I can have the insurance and set up right. What we do in most of the cases is we just, cross-purpose it. We use permanent insurance in the 7702 tax code so that the death benefit can be there if needed. But realistically, the money's all growing tax-free inside there. So you can be funding the retirement program. So lots of ways to kill multiple birds with one stone when you're doing coordinated planning like this. And that's the problem when people are dealing with various entities to try to accomplish this. That one entity doesn't know what the next entity is doing, and you can't really get any good coordination around that. The last thing on the box, and then we'll get out of this, is what if you're just a one-person company? What if you're the owner, you're a sole proprietor? Does this apply to you too? Because we used a partnership or a multiple partners example. Yes, of course. Because one day you're going to want to get out of that. And you'll hear about one person buy sells, one way buy sells. The idea of the key person, you lose somebody that's important. How do you replace them? All of that can get built inside this box using the tools as Jamie talked about. So we're darn close to the top of the hour. And I know we wanted to try to hit a question or two.
Yeah, so I've got some questions coming in. Let's see. I've got a couple I want to kind of get through what I think. Oh, this one's quick. Can you get dental, vision, life insurance without having health insurance, or is that a prerequisite to getting those other?
No, any of the other things outside of the health insurance, and I just say the health insurance because that's the biggie usually. But yes, you can get any of those individually, and you can get them on company pays for it all, company pays for a part of it, or it's entirely voluntary to the employees.
Yeah, my guess is the reason that came in is because it's a way to provide benefits without the full cost of providing health insurance benefits, right? It's kind of the stepping or the entry point to full benefits. So
and the options are very good to the people you're trying to hire.
And to what both of you are saying, Mark mentioned early on that those other benefits are not big ticket items, yet they are valuable. There's not just perceived, but actual value as you try to recruit talent. And because they're voluntary, as we keep saying, the business can pay as little or as much toward those premiums as they want. But just to give you an example that's fresh, because we had a company just a couple, 2-3 weeks ago, they're actually 12-1 live. They did everything but the health, and they 11 employees, and their all-in expenditure is $400 a month. That's not per employee. That was to pay for all these things for all 11 employees. And they're also getting the financial wellness where we're doing the individual stuff with our paraplanners and that sort of stuff. But they're super reasonably priced.
Yeah, I think that's really cool to start to think of this stuff as like stepping stones or entry points to the full balloon of everything that you offer, that there are ways to gradually move in. I think you mentioned, Mark, that almost nobody does this all at once. I'm pretty sure we did it all at once. That's just the way we operate. But there's a question here, which is a good one. Do the number of employees matter for any of these? I.e., are there any magic numbers for any of these specific things? You'd mentioned one, and then kind of all the else. I know that with HR, there's
I mean, for healthcare, you're going to have more than one. You can't call one person a group. And depending on carriers, or if you have out-of-state employees or all of that, there's rules. But Usually, Jamie, I mean, 2, 3, 4, you can do something.
On the healthcare, on the rest of those employee benefits, we're usually looking at groups of 10 or more. There are carriers, and it's worth noting because we just haven't addressed it. Our platform is wide open, so we don't have a particular carrier that we have to go to, or we get compensated, more over one over the other, et cetera. It's a wide open, levelized platform, so it's worth knowing that.
Yeah,
But
we'll shop the market to find the best arrangements.
yeah, and the other thing, especially on the group benefits, there's no such thing as a middleman markup. So we always use the example, if you were going to get a Blue Cross plan and you called 1-800 Blue Cross, it's the same premium as working through us, shopping through all the carriers out there. By law, those premiums are set. So there's no middlemaning, if you will. So in a sense, you're getting the value out of having professionals shop it for you. Again, so you could focus on the business of your actual business. But back to minimums and that sort of stuff, groups come in, you have small group and large group, and oftentimes it's carrier specific, maybe over 100 employees, less than 100, some draw the line at 50. But on the ancillary benefits, things like disability, short-term disability, long-term disability, group life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, I'm sure I'm missing a couple. 10 is the typical minimum carrier rate to put a group together. And then on the medical, we do have situations where if it's a non-spouse, non-relative, you could have a 2-person group for medical coverage.
And
but as Mark said, yeah.
401ks, the retirement planning and stuff, limits on that?
So what you're
Yeah,
going
you
to
can
find,
literally do a 1-person 401k.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give you, we're kind of at the limit here. I'm going to keep asking these questions as we have them, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to give a little commercial for yourself. I know that you guys have donated an hour of your time to kind of come in here. My goal would be not only to help everybody who gets to see this and be a part of this, hopefully enlighten them and kind of get them interested, if nothing else. But there's probably a next step if they are interested, to hopefully get in touch with you guys. So if you want to take 1 to 2 minutes, give yourself a little commercial, and then we'll get to the rest of the questions.
Well, I would think, will participants be able to get our contact information?
Yeah. If anybody is on this right now and you want their contact information, just email me and I'll make sure to get all of that to you guys. So you won't have to worry about that. Email me, Corey@CoreyWright.com. I'll get you all the contact information. I'll try and send this out to everybody who attended as well. I will get a recap email with that information.
Yeah, and that's the best thing, because then people could just contact us and just start discussing what's their circumstance, what are they trying to accomplish, and then we can start giving some guidance from there. There's no hourly fees or whatever. As Jamie said, we get paid by the carriers, if you end up doing business with us. If you don't do business with us, we don't get paid. But does it look like we're going broke? Most people, there's always going to be something in the marketplace, because we can shop the market where we can improve somebody's situation. So it's just a matter of contacting us. We can chat through what you're trying to get accomplished and then move from there.
hey, I'd like to share anecdotally, and I actually wasn't in this particular meeting. I couldn't make it for whatever reason, but Mark, we were supposed to meet, but Mark met with the economic development director of a local county here.
The Inland Empire. It was for the Inland Empire.
Yeah, and so you want to share that quick story, because I think that really does sum up our value proposition in a neat way.
Well, basically, because remember, he represents thousands and thousands of closely held businesses, and part of the Economic Development Council is always trying to find opportunities for those businesses. So when I explained to him, hey, we'll visit with the employer, we'll analyze their situation, we'll show them what all the different options are, we'll shop the market, we'll design what they want to do, we'll find them the best deals. He said, well, how much time do you usually put into that? So that depends on the company, but it could be 5 hours, it could be 10 hours of all the busy work and all that. Now, that's not like we're taking 10 hours of the business owner's time, because a lot of the time is the shopping and putting the options together. But maybe 5, maybe 10 hours, depending on it. He said, well, what do you charge for that? And I said, well, we don't charge anything directly to the employer. He said, well, wait a minute. Nobody's going to believe that. How do you guys make money? So the way we make money is we get paid by the carriers. If somebody does business with us, whether it's an investment product, we're licensed, we're registered, whether it's investment products, whether it's insurance products, we'll get paid by the organizations. As Jamie said, there's no markups. I mean, it's the same price because it's all registered and licensed stuff. The companies are going to charge what they're going to charge, whether it's going through a broker or whether it's going direct to the company. So it's not a world where we can discount. Then I pointed out that we can't quid pro quo things. I mean, it's very common in a business arrangement. If I'm working with a car dealership, they'll say, hey man, if you can cut me a deal on my insurance, then I'll cut you a deal on your next car, kind of thing. And that's quid pro quo. Well, in their world, they can cut the deal on the car. In our world, as Jamie said, we're licensed, we're registered, and the products and the investments, they're licensed, they're registered. So you can't kick back unless the other person were licensed and registered too. Then we could work an arrangement. But the reality is we're going to get paid. Now we could charge a fee too, but once somebody understands we're going to get paid by the carriers, why would they want to pay us a separate fee? We're going to do the work we're going to do anyways. Then he said, well, then in effect, you guys take all the risk, because what if they don't do business with you? Then you've educated them, you've shopped for them, and they go do the business with their brother-in-law. I said, well, it's possible. I mean, it could happen, but almost never does, because usually we're going to have some ideas that they're not going to be able to get implemented elsewhere. And again, it's our business model. Does it look like we're going broke? It works fine. And that way, business owners never have to worry about, hey, if I talk to them, I'm going to be on the clock and I'm going to start getting bills for, the advice.
Perfect. Yeah, I liken it to kind of like a buyer's agent for a real estate agent. You can go show somebody all sorts of property. There's no guarantee that they're going to buy a property. And if they don't, then the real estate agent spent a lot of their time researching and taking them and showing them property, and they get paid nothing. But if they do buy a property, they get paid out of the commission. It didn't cost the buyer anything off the top or anything extra. It's a known part of that transaction. And that's kind of the relationship that you guys have, that it's your goal just to do what's best for us as the business. And I think it's really, really cool. So, all right, couple other questions. Let's try and make these quick. I think this one might've been answered, but what things could be done special for the top execs that don't have to be done for everybody? You talked about kind of what we had likened to that unlimited Roth, or that much higher limited Roth. That's probably the answer there. Is there anything else other than?
Yeah, no, that's the right answer.
Cool. Let's see. What mistakes can business owners be doing today that may make any of the strategies you're proposing difficult down the road? Is there anything that business owners who can't employ these immediately should be avoiding so that they don't accident, kind of like getting the felony and then you can't get.
No, I think it's the classic. You said it before about the planning. I mean, you need to understand what your options are. I wish there were a big generic answer that, hey, here's where people mess up. People mess up by not knowing what's possible to do, and then implementing what they can, because if time goes by, it's wasted time. Sure. Right? You kind of got to understand what's possible, and then say, okay, I can do this now, we'll have to do this later. But and every business is a little bit different.
I just add, the biggest mistake I see is that business owners a la carte all of this stuff, right? And so they have a health plan over there, then they have some other group benefits with some other guy over there, and then the payroll company 401k plan, and then some other investments, and an insurance guy got them to overfund some insurance over here, and no one's actually holistically looking at the whole thing. I do think we're uniquely positioned as a firm because we are fully registered. Mark and I, even beyond that, we're supervisory registered principals, all the FINRA registrations that come out there with the SEC and FINRA. But so it's kind of a combo of stockbrokers and insurance people and fee-based financial planners. We have all those licensing throughout our firm. And so it doesn't have to piecemeal all over. And then the other thing that I don't think we hit super great, our model is structured where whatever the priorities, the 2, 3, 4 priorities on that chart are for a business at this particular moment, we will bring in subject matter experts. Obviously, between Mark and myself, we have whatever it is, 65 years of experience combined, most of it not mine. But between, so we know all this stuff, and we actually do trainings for our organization where we teach newer advisors all this stuff, et cetera. But we still bring in subject matter experts. We have group benefits experts who can't even spell 401k because all they do is focus on the benefits. And we have 401k experts who do that. We tend to do a lot of the other non-qual planning and some of the other stuff. The point is, we are part of a massive team that we've put together with specialists to bring in on each part that the business owner needs help with.
That's cool. The other thing that you had mentioned actually in the episode earlier in the webinar is kind of snapping on sometimes out of convenience instead of, with different things to where that could down the road cause a little bit more trouble. So that would also answer that. All right, one more question, and then I've got one selfish question that I want to know about. So this one comes from somebody is, how do you guys interface or coordinate with a PEO? Do you guys, you guys are kind of like a version of a PEO, just in a different kind of vein, but there's a little bit of overlap too, I would imagine. How do you guys interface or work with PEOs?
Yeah, what we're doing right now, we're actually providing the product to a lot of PEOs. So the PEO says, hey, if you join our PEO, you'll have a retirement plan offering. Well, the retirement planning offering is ours. We've put it together with the PEO. But other than that, the PEO kind of tries to do what we do. Most PEOs were formed originally around HR and trying to provide all the sort of multiple requirements of HR that a closely held business probably doesn't have the expertise behind. And then what they've done is kind of bolted on, hey, if you're part of our PEO, you can also get a healthcare plan, you can also get a retirement plan, you can also, and then it goes back to the same issue as the, as the payroll provider. A lot of kind of organizations right now, just like Amazon's going to be doing everything for everybody soon. It'll get you your investments, it'll get you your retirement plans, it'll get you your food, at Whole Foods, it'll get you everything. A lot of organizations are trying to do this. We're kind of within that swim lane that you saw on the grid. We're not going to get outside of that, but it goes back to that, will the level of what you're getting, because unfortunately to the outside world, hey, I got a retirement plan, aren't they all the same? No. You can have a 4 or you can have a 10. Which do you want? And you can, and it can be serving your purposes. So that's kind of the interplay with POs. But with a lot of the POs, they got to find product because they don't make it themselves. Sure. So then they might come to our organization and we'd say, yeah, use this retirement plan to fund this. Now there we're dealing differently. The PEOs are then paying us.
Sure. And I think if I'm hearing right, what you're saying is the PEO has a couple lanes that they're really good at: the HR, the payroll, the training, that the HR training that takes place inside of an organization, and they kind of offer some ancillaries. And probably the best relationship is to use a PEO for those, and then everything that's more the financial and executive and employee benefit sector, sticking to you guys and kind of using those as two sides to kind of that professional services.
Come to your specialist, right? Come to your specialist. We're going to be able to get a lot deeper.
Cool. All right. Here's my the question that I have. How difficult is an ESOP to set up, and what are the right types of businesses to do this? And the genesis of this question is I work with a lot of smaller businesses that really want to find ways to reward their employees and like do some sort of profit sharing or something like this. And I know ESOPs have become really popular over the last decade or so, or at least probably the last 5 years is when I've actually really started hearing about them. Is this a way to kind of to do that? How difficult are they set up? And is there a sweet spot for the right type of business for an ESOP?
Yeah, let me give you my prejudice on this. The theoretical upside of an ESOP, it sounds nice, right? An employee stock ownership program. It sounds nice, but and it is nice given the exact right circumstance that the time frame in which you want to get out of the company. How you can gradually shift it off to the other people. You've already done the other things. What your succession ownership will be, who's going to run it, and all that. Because literally in an ESOP, what you're doing is you're giving away ownership of the company to other people. And those other people may or may not be there over time. And what is your leadership of the company going to be? What is the future of the company going to be? So you've almost got to be in a position in an ESOP where you know what your next future strategy is going to be, and you're already set up to do it. And you want to say, it's like Tommy Boy or something, the movie, you know, you want all those employees to have a piece of the company when you exit out of there, kind of deal. But in my mind, there's better ways to accomplish that without having to kind of give away the ownership and keep the level of control. You can create we nickname it synthetic equity, or phantom stock. You'll hear those phrases used, but you can kind of provide the vested interest to the people and give them performance-based opportunities, wealth opportunities, without having to actually give away the ownership.
Sure.
And in an ESOP, you actually give away the ownership.
And to be clear, phantom stock is stock that's issued to an employee that would only execute at the time of a sale. Is that correct? What phantom stock technically?
Well, it's not true stock. It's not, because stock, people forgot that a long time ago, that stock, if you got a stock certificate, it means you own a piece of that company. So when people go out and trade on Robinhood and say, oh, I just bought Apple. Well, what you bought is this infinitesimally little piece of Apple. They don't give stock certificates anymore. Everything's electronic and all of that, but you're owning a piece of the company when you do stock. So when we say, and an ESOP, that's happening.
Sure.
You're giving away the piece of the company. Phantom stock is saying you're using some other form of equity to be able to deliver the benefit to the person that's comparable to the ownership, but you're not giving away the ownership.
Gotcha. Perfect.
And again, once you know you're ready to give away the ownership and you've got a time frame and you've got succession leadership and all that stuff's planned out, then the end game of that might be the ESOP. But I do think, and incidentally, what you said, ESOPs were actually a lot more popular 20 years ago.
I wasn't in business. Well, I was, but
They almost
I wasn't thinking about ESOPs 20 years ago.
And they're kind of getting reheard of a little bit now, because in a world of equity and social good and ESG and all of that, it sounds cool. It sounds like, hey, I'm going to tie the people to the interest of the company by giving a piece of the action.
Sure.
Well, you can create that same concept without actually giving away the ownership.
Yeah, and when I do get that question, because like I said, that's selfish to an answer that I often look for. There's a book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, where he identifies a really cool way to educate your employees on the financial mechanics of a business, give them the opportunity to affect the outcome based on increasing in the income coming into the business or decreasing the expenses, leading to greater profits, and then give them a share of the outcome. And so I think it's a really kind of interesting way of looking at it. So for anybody who
and exactly what you're saying there, the performance-based incentives.
Sure.
And that's what you're trying to do. You want to tie them into, hey, the better the company does, the better you do. But you don't have to actually give away the company to do that.
Exactly. So cool. Well, hey, I want to thank you guys. I know we ran a little over here. Thank you guys so much for giving me your time.
Hey, one other thing quick, Corey, I'm sorry. I know we are way over. Something for the people listening in California, but it's broadening over a lot of states. There's like 18 states now. And there's a lot of discussion at the federal level. It probably won't make it into any of these two bills that Biden's pushing, but there's a lot of bipartisan acceptance of the idea of broadening retirement programming in the country. And so the government is looking, and a state like California, they got a program called Cal Savers that basically says as of this year, if you got 50 or more employees, you have to have a retirement program for your people. Next year moves down to 5 employees. Okay, and any company 5 or more is going to be required to have a retirement program for their people. Now, if they don't have a commercial plan, the kind of thing that we would do, they've got to take the government program, when you take a look at the government program, it's a derivative of Roth. It's the only option. It's government controlled. It's entirely administered by the employer, giving them a lot of liability. And if an employee moves, which you know they're going to do, a lot of these employees are going to move. If they moved out of state, if they moved to a company that had a private plan, none of that has been figured out yet by these programs. So there's a great concern in these government programs. What could happen to the employee's money over time that is being put into this government plan? And what about the employer? What liabilities do they have if they don't know where the employee went to the next employer and they don't transfer the money out? So I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think you can probably figure out pretty quick if the government mandates retirement programming for companies, you probably want to very quickly say, let me take a look at private plans that will work for me and I can design them and juxtapose it up against that government program, because I don't think anybody's knowing what the reality is would want to be in the government program.
Yeah, I think bringing in a specialist for certainly situations like that. I know there's a lot of other situations now with such distributed workforce. There's a lot of California companies that I work with that are starting to pick up employees in multiple states, which brings in a lot of different, just different concerns and with putting plans and health insurance and things like that in place. And so I think the service that you guys provide is becoming more and more valuable with the way that the workforce is headed. And I'm very glad to some extent that right now I have a very simple business of just myself and didn't have to deal with employees through the COVID and all that stuff, the COVID changes, and was very fortunate, but I know not everybody else was, and having partners like you guys on board is such a powerful thing that you can do. Again, whether or not you need to execute on any of these right now, building the relationship, putting your eyes on kind of what the strategy is, and then laying out that roadmap so that when it is time to move or execute or kind of piece these things together one at a time, you guys are right there to do it. And personally, I can't thank you guys enough, not just for today, but for what you've done for me and my business and in all of these areas that we've talked about today. And you continue to teach me new things every time we chat and make me feel better about just the future of my businesses and the people that I take care of and rely on and that rely on me as well. So thank you guys very, very much for your time today.
Okay, great.
It was
Thanks
great
so
to
much.
be with you, Corey. Thank
Great
you.
being with you. Bye-bye.